welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you've ever spent time tracing your family tree, you absolutely know the feeling. You're making amazing progress, connecting names and dates, and then, bam, the trail just goes totally cold. You've hit the dreaded genealogical brick wall. It happens to all of us. But today, we're going to break right through it. We're going to completely reframe how you look at historical documents by using a really structured framework based on the top 20 record types that professionals use. So let's jump right in. Okay, there's this old adage in the community: no single ancestor will appear in every type of record. It is so tempting to hunt for that one golden record, the magical piece of paper that holds all the answers. But honestly, that's a myth. An ancestor's life is way more like a mosaic. It's made up of dozens of tiny, scattered pieces of evidence. And here's a really fascinating takeaway from our source material. Even a record you don't find is a vital clue. A missing record can tell you where a person definitely wasn't living, or maybe suggest records were lost in a fire or never even created to begin with. It's all about looking at the big picture. So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the genealogy brick wall itself. Then, we'll cover who and when, followed by where did they live and what and why. Finally, we'll wrap up with a concrete research strategy. Starting off with Section 1, the genealogy brick wall, and facing the challenge. Trying to synthesize dozens of historical documents can feel incredibly overwhelming if you aren't sure exactly what you're looking for. To actually tear down that wall, you've got to approach your records actively. You're not just scanning for a name, you're trying to establish the who. Like, who was this person and who were they connected to? For parent-child links, birth records are obviously your foundation. But you have to look deeper. Baptism and christening records often predate civil registration entirely. And those listed sponsors, they're frequently hidden relatives you just wouldn't find otherwise. Marriage records give you spouses and parents, sure, but check the witnesses. They're often extended family. And when you're really digging into the who, probate records are an absolute goldmine. Wills and estate papers provide the strongest direct evidence of family connections by explicitly naming heirs, siblings, and kids. And hey, published genealogies are great for clues too. But remember, they always need to be verified with primary records. Moving on to Section 2, who and when, building a timeline. We've got the who, but now we really need to nail down the specific chronological timeline of an ancestor's life. We need the when. Tracking a single life chronologically means you have to layer your records. Think of it like this. You might start with an 1880 birth certificate. Fast forward 20 years and you spot them on the 1900 census. By 1905, maybe you find a marriage announcement in a local paper, and eventually you cap it all off with a 1945 death certificate. By layering vital records, censuses, and newspapers, you build a really solid timeline. And seriously, don't sleep on newspapers. Obituaries, birth notices, and even dry legal notices often give you dates and specific details that are completely missing from official state vital records. Which brings us to Section 3, where did they live? Tracking migration. Once we know who they are and when they lived, we've got to figure out their physical movements. To answer where, you need a specific set of tools. Census records are fantastic for documenting family movement over the decades, giving you birthplaces and property ownership. But what about those 10 years in between the censuses? For that, you absolutely need land, property, and tax records. Deeds and mortgages show neighbors and land transfers, which is crucial because family members constantly bought and sold land to each other back then. And here's a fun fact for you. Tax rolls are incredibly valuable because sometimes the literal only way to tell two ancestors with the exact same name apart is by counting exactly how many cows they were taxed for in a specific year. Then you have city directories. Published annually, they are amazing for tracking residences, employers, and moves year by year. Plus, church records can firmly place a family in a community long-term, highlighting their local involvement. All right, Section 4, what and why? The deeper narrative. We have the basic facts laid out, but now it's time to dive into the deeper narrative questions. What did they actually do? And why on earth did they do it? These records give us the what, their occupations, their education, and the big life events. Military records are just incredible for this. Draft registrations might literally describe your great-grandfather's eye color and height, which just brings them right to life, especially when paired with affidavits from relatives. Employment records, like personnel files or professional licenses, document their day-to-day careers. School records, including yearbooks and attendance logs, show us their early years and extracurriculars. And court records? They aren't just dry legal jargon. Civil lawsuits and criminal proceedings are packed with detailed word-for-word testimony that tells you exactly what kind of neighborhood drama your ancestor was wrapped up in on a Tuesday in 1890.
But to really get at the why behind their decisions, we have to look for the emotional and financial drivers. Why did a family split up? Why did they suddenly pack up and move? Well, divorce records, which honestly get overlooked a lot, contain extensive testimony about family disputes and financial circumstances that you just will not find anywhere else. Probate records do way more than name heirs. They reveal deep, sometimes messy family dynamics. You find out who was favored and who was explicitly written out of the will. Newspapers, especially those little local social columns, add a ton of personality and set the social scene of the era. And of course, personal family records, diaries, letters, the family Bible, oral histories. These give you the intimate details and the actual reasoning behind major life events directly from the people who live them.
So, bringing this all together, we have our complete 5 W's framework. You can clearly see how these 20 record types perfectly map out to specific genealogical questions. Look at this. If you're stuck on a brick wall because you don't know where an ancestor went, jump right to that middle row and pull land, tax, and city directories. Stuck because you don't know who their parents were? Go to the top row and dig into probates, baptisms, and marriage witnesses. This highly structured approach makes sure you're building a complete 360-degree mosaic of evidence instead of just endlessly hunting for a single birth certificate.
And finally, Section 5, the research strategy, applying the framework. We've got the theory down, but how do we actually apply this in the real world without getting buried in paperwork?
You need a rock-solid method. For every direct ancestor you research, you should create a checklist of those 20 record categories and follow these 5 steps. Step 1, search. Literally check off whether you looked for each of the 20 types. This guarantees no major source category slips through the cracks. Step 2, log locations. Write down exactly which archives or websites you visited so you aren't redoing your own work 6 months later. Step 3, log findings. Write down exactly what you found and, just as crucially, what you did not find. Remember, negative evidence is still evidence. Step 4, cite sources. Document the citation for every single record you examine. And step 5, plan. When records are missing, use that handy checklist to brainstorm where else you could look based on the 5 W's.
Now, doing this actively aligns your work with what professionals call the Genealogical Proof Standard, or the GPS. The GPS is all about encouraging a reasonably exhaustive search, careful source citation, thorough analysis, and soundly reasoned conclusions. By meticulously tracking which of the 20 records you've checked for the who, what, when, where, and why, your checklist essentially transforms into a highly effective research log. It takes your research from casual weekend browsing to rigorous analysis, and it massively increases your chances of finding new evidence and finally shattering that brick wall.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with kind of a provocative thought. Think about all the records we just talked about: employment files, taxes, land deeds, and even social media as the modern-day newspaper. You are actively generating the exact same categories of records for your own life right now. So what is your paper trail going to say about you to some curious genealogist 100 years from now? Are they going to be able to easily answer the who, when, where, what, and why of your life? Or are you going to be their next great brick wall? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep organizing those records, keep applying the framework, and happy researching.